Well, here we are. The end of the line, the final stop of this terrifying train. We're pulling in to 2021 station, and we're all getting ready to just kind of breathe out again and go back to our normal lives. It's been it's been an unprecedented year, mainly for the word unprecedented, which has been used by everyone everywhere to describe all the problems that kind of just popped up out of nowhere in 2020, having never been problems before, like systemic racism and Australian wildfires. I mean, like, we're hardly living through anything new, are we? I mean, okay, sure, the global pandemic doesn't come around too often, but unprecedented? No. Nothing that happened in 2020 was unprecedented. I mean, take take Black Lives Matter for example. Every single comedic or every single tribute to 2020, every single comedic overview of the year, or every lament at the hard times we've all been living through, has some mention of the protest about racial injustice in America, and around the world that took place this year, as if protesting about racism was one of the new features of our world that has just suddenly beamed onto the planet this year. But the truth is, BLM was founded in 2013, responding to the shooting of Trayvon Martin by American police. There were protests in the streets for 400 days. There have been protests for the last 7 years about the deaths of Eric Garner, Michael Brown, Walter Scott, Freddie Gray, Megan Hockaday, Deborah Danner, Alton Sterling, Philandro Castile, Grecario Mack, Kenneth Ross Jr., Isaiah Lewis, who was a teenager. I mean, last year alone in America, 999 people were killed by the police. 999, which is a rather ironic number from a UK standpoint. But for some reason, one of the defining aspects of this year were the George Floyd protests this year. Um, and, well, okay, maybe they were very significant events. I actually think that they were. But why didn't large scale mass protests about the same issues by the same organisation define any of the other years that we've just lived through? We're not living through history this year any more than we were last year. What we're living through is a meme. The premise of this meme is that 2020 has been some crazy year, with everything that happened in January, the near World War and the wildfires and Brexit, and then the emergence of the global pandemic. We all started to joke that 2020 had some apocalyptic quality that other years lacked. And once that joke became mainstream, and we all jokingly and only partially ironically believed that this was some unlucky year, then we started paying closer attention to the news. Because every single major news story, regardless of how precedented it was or how terrible it was, fed the meme, right? We pulled the Hong Kong protests into it, despite the fact that they'd been raging all last year. We pulled Dominic Cummings' behaviour into it, despite the fact that, surprise, politicians don't really have a history of behaving reasonably and legally. So now, rather than seeing major political catastrophes as the product of broken political systems, or major kind of environmental disasters as the product of centuries of environmental degradation, we've instead started viewing them as like the up and down slopes on the world's worst roller coaster that is 2020. Sorry, I'm gonna have to. Yeah, hello. Unknown number. Hello. Yeah. Well, I was actually just filming a video about 2020. Well, how do you know? I. Who is this? A Zoom call? now, well, actually, yeah, you know what? A Zoom call with a complete random stranger will make an absolutely perfect inclusion in my video about 2020. Not that video conferencing is anything new. Yeah, no, I'm still here. Yeah, okay. Yeah. No, I'm loading my computer up as we speak. I will send me the code, and I'll see you in a minute. Bye. Well, this might as well happen, right? I'll record the video. I'll record the call, and if it's not interesting, then I guess you won't have seen any of that phone call because I'll cut all of this out of the video. But if I leave it in, I guess enjoy whatever this is. How is this? How are you? This is going to be in your YouTube video, right? Right. Let's just keep it short then, and not get too bogged down with the whole two Johns thing. We've got a lot to cover. Right. Basically, I know what you were just saying about 2020, and I completely disagree. I'm another version of yourself who believes the exact opposite thing to what you believe, and I'm here to be included in your YouTube videos so I can prove you wrong and your viewers can learn something much more accurate about this year. Do you know what? Sure. That might as well happen. It is 2020 after all. Well, that is exactly what I've zoomed in to talk about. See, I don't understand how you can view this year as just some generic period of time with nothing significant about it. Like, as part of your point, you listed that in January alone we saw Australia on fire, Britain withdraw from the European Union, the threat of a Third World War, and the emergence of what will become a global pandemic in the first month of the year. This isn't some meme. This is history. And what do you know about what's unprecedented anyway? You are 19 years old. Everything in your life so far has been unprecedented. You're desensitized to novelty as a young person. Every day you get introduced to some new concept. Most of your experiences are firsts. The people who actually appreciate the magnitude of what's going on this year are people who've lived a bit longer than you. Middle-aged people, old people. And in case you hadn't noticed, they've been behind a lot of the 2020 jokes. They've been feeding the meme as well. Well, all I've been saying is that we've taken a few major uncommon incidents at the start of the year, like coronavirus outbreak, and we've somehow come to the conclusion that this year is cursed. Then for the rest of the year we've been taking every single news story as evidence of that point, despite the fact that most people wouldn't pay these things more than a day's worth of attention any other year. But how can you disagree with people? This has been, by all accounts, a completely shit year, filled with plague, fire, and you're on mute. No, like, you're actually on mute. Yeah. I just think it's harmful that everyone's surprised by what's been happening this year. Oh, right. And you were shopping in a face mask in 2019, were you? Since you'd seen this year coming. panic buying toilet roll before it was cool. Alright, let's look at the Beirut explosion. That was caused by this exact problem. What? Toilet roll shortages? No, ignorance. And for the record, I think it's really insensitive to joke about such a massive catastrophe. In that Death to 2020 Charlie Brooker mockumentary, they kind of timidly gestured at it several times as if to make a joke about it. You know what I mean? And then they just kind of like left in the gesture. Actually, there was a moment in it where they did make a joke relating to it, and like that whole bit is like really, really painful to sit through. But not to get sidetracked, anyway, my point is the Beirut explosion was caused by ignorance. It only exploded because those 2,700 tonnes of ammonium nitrate were offloaded from a ship in 2014 and just left to sit at a port for 6 years, more or less completely unattended. People's lack of awareness about issues in the first place leads them to be taken by surprise when they finally have some impact on their own lives. That Beirut port was a problem long before 2020. Well, yes, but it exploded in 2020. I don't see how you can view a functioning port with a health and safety problem where people could go about their days and trade and just be, alive as somehow worse than the actual gigantic explosion that injured 6,000 people and cost $4.6 billion in damage. My point is that it never would have exploded in the first place if they'd been paying attention to the thousands of tons of decaying explosive material. And that's what this year's been, actually. This year has been a succession of explosions caused by things that we already knew were about to explode. Take the California wildfires. They happen more or less every year, but because of the drought caused by climate change, which dries up all the land, they're getting worse and worse every single time they happen. And the California Fire Department know this. They can predict this. They've experienced firsthand the increase in severity of the fires over the past couple of decades. Same case in Australia. In fact, fires everywhere in the world are getting worse all of the time. Last year saw the greatest amount of fire-based destruction of the Amazon rainforest for a decade. This year, we topped it. Next year, if all goes to Bolsonaro's plan, we'll top it again. We'll see the sky of California orange again. Australia burning again. And why will we keep seeing repeats of 2020 incidents over and over again? Because we keep blaming 2020 like some malevolent force rather than the people and systems responsible for 2020. It's like you've had a habit, right, of walking down dark alleyways in dodgy neighbourhoods for your whole life, and then one day you get mugged at 10 o'clock down one alley and 10:15 in the next alley, and rather than thinking, oh, maybe I should stop walking down dodgy alleyways at night, instead you think, man, 10 o'clock is such an unlucky hour. Can't wait for it to be 11 o'clock so I don't have to worry about getting mugged anymore, and then continuing to walk down dodgy alleys. If we see 2020 as some like unlucky year, it's like this bad meme, it's not going to die like Harambe did and subsequently Harambe memes did. We're going to see the same type of year again and again and again, because we won't feel the need to try and fix the world if we don't think it needs fixing. That's what I'm trying to say. I think you've fundamentally misunderstood the importance of the 2020 meme. And also, like, don't victim blame. If someone gets mugged down a dark alley, if they've had a lifelong habit of... Let's not get into that. Anyway, I don't think that by highlighting the absurdity of this year, people are disregarding history or whatever. They're just saying that this has been a hard year, and you cannot deny that. You've been in lockdown all year. Your university experience has been unbelievably diminished by the fact that all your lectures are now essentially PowerPoints with disembodied voiceover narration. I mean, you caught the bloody coronavirus, for heaven's sake. You've got to admit, that was pretty terrifying. It was fine. In fact, I probably had the best years of sleep of my life in the days when I had COVID. You were so tired that you thought you were going to starve because you didn't have the energy to leave your bed. Right, well, whatever. The point is, this has been an undeniably hard year for everyone, which has made a lot of people aware that global politics, national politics, and even regional politics, in the case of localised whack-a-mole lockdowns, can significantly impact their lives. That has become a mainstream belief in a way that it has not been for a very long time. All we've got to do now as a society is sustain that realisation for long enough to become engaged enough in world politics to start reading up on it. Reading up on it? You mean how millions of people are now reading up on COVID by clicking through Facebook adverts explaining it was a plandemic constructed by Bill Gates to, I don't know, make himself richer or something? He did get richer during the coronavirus. His estimated fortune grew by 19%. Okay, the conspiracy theories are a problem, and that's another thing that people are more aware of thanks to 2020. The increase in crazy anti-maskers and anti-vaxxers who have been really vocal and protesting is leading people to have more serious conversations about the social harms of conspiracy theories. Yeah, but people still believe that conspiracy theories are some new phenomenon unique to 2020, when in fact there were anti-maskers and lockdown protesters 100 years ago when the Spanish flu was going around. Yeah, but in 2020 there's a new strain of anti-vaxxers, right? The internet has caused a mutation in anti-science propaganda, and it's spreading much more quickly than it did in 1918. And that's really the key, isn't it? Because it means that actually 2020 is without precedent. There have been pandemics before, but never in the time of the internet. A pandemic in 2020 can devastate the high streets permanently by moving us all indoors and online to shop and then keeping us there. A pandemic in 2020, like no other pandemic before, is full of video calls and working from home and too much time on streaming services. None of this has a historical precedent. We're all learning new ways to cope with a new set of circumstances, and yeah, I reckon most of us just want things to go back to the way they were. Oh my god, that is exactly the problem. If people genuinely want things to go back to the way they were, then very soon they'll go back to the way they are. But even worse, the next time. The number of zoonotic diseases, right, which means the diseases transferred from animals to humans, have quadrupled in the last decade, meaning that another coronavirus is around the corner. And you want to know why? Deforestation. When large areas of forest get cut down, animals are forced to migrate into the areas that are still available to live in. That means they're all tightly packed together with all the other animals, and that leads diseases to jump much more quickly from species to species. And then when we take these diseased animals in huge numbers into wet markets and industrial meat production plants without any food standards regulation, we provide viruses with a perfect environment in which to develop. Then they get passed to us when we eat them, and oh look, the pubs are closed again. If we go back to the way things were, if we perpetuate this global effort to destroy rainforests and farm industrial meat, then we're going to keep getting pandemics. Well then, let's use the power of 2020 to make people change their behaviour. I don't think we're even disagreeing with each other here. We both agree that 2020 was a bad year. You think it was bad because it was like every previous year but just a bit worse. And actually I think it was bad for more or less the same reason. Luckily, everyone else agrees with us as well. That's confirmed by your 2020 meme theory. So that means we've got the perfect opportunity here to warn people about future 2020 events. We can use the warning of a bad year to give people a tangible reason to care about deforestation and climate change and racism and big tech. Well, people will only make the right changes if they stop seeing these as 2020 problems and start seeing them as systemic problems with long historical roots and long solutions. Well then, tell them! My YouTube channel is not big enough to make major societal change. my videos are like way too long, and I'm always like surprised and like skeptical when someone tells me they actually watched all the way to the end of any. Well then, tell as many people as you can, get them to share, like and comment on this video for a start, and then rest assured that everyone you don't reach will see soon enough that these really aren't just 2020 problems. I mean, they'll see that in 2021 and pretty quickly have to rethink the meme. Hang on. Wait. So are we coming to the conclusion, right, that it'll be beneficial to the future of the world if 2021 is like really bad? Because then it'll convince people that maybe the world needs changing and scare everyone into actually changing it, so we don't have to face as many years like this ever again. Provided people learn the right lessons and look in the right directions, yeah. Well, that is dark. Yeah, this was meant to be like a reasonably funny, like 5-minute sketch, wasn't it? What happened? 2020, I guess. There's just too much to talk about, and there's not enough to joke about. Yeah. But how can we reassure ourselves that 2021 will indeed be a bad year? That we need it to be. What is literally happening on the 1st of January 2021 in Britain? Oh yeah. Happy New Year, everyone. Happy New Year.